Morning. It's Thursday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. And I want to talk to you a little bit today about Cinco de Mayo, because there's much about it that is misunderstood. There are many who believe that Cinco de Mayo is the Mexican Independence Day, and that's not really true. In fact, Cinco de Mayo isn't even a major holiday in Mexico. Cinco de Mayo is actually a holiday that celebrates the day that the Mexican army was victorious over France at the Battle of Puebla during the French-Mexican War. How many of you knew that there was a French-Mexican War? I didn't really know about this holiday. This year it falls on today. While it's a relatively minor holiday in Mexico, in the United States, Cinco de Mayo has evolved to the commemoration of Mexican culture and heritage. That is particularly true in areas with large Mexican-American populations. So that would be places probably like California, definitely, and Texas, and in other states on our southwest border. So let me tell you what happened in the Mexican-France War. Let me tell you how it got started. Benito Juarez was a lawyer and a member of the indigenous Mexican Zapotec tribe, and he was elected president. And at that time, Mexico was in financial ruin after years of internal strife, and the new president was forced to default on the debt payments to European governments. In response to that default, France, Britain, and Spain sent naval forces to Veracruz, Mexico, demanding repayment. Of course, the Mexicans didn't have anything to repay them with, right? But Britain and Spain negotiated with Mexico and withdrew their forces. But France was stubborn, and they were not forgiving the debt. That's what I'm looking for, forgiving the debt. France's leader at that time was Napoleon III, and he decided to use the opportunity to carve an empire out of the Mexican territory. So late in 1861, a well-armed French fleet stormed Veracruz, landing a large force of troops and driving President Juarez and his government into retreat. So they retreated, and the French followed, and that ended up at the Battle of Puebla. Napoleon thought that success would come quickly. Doesn't that sound a lot like what's going on in the Ukraine right now? You think Putin would have studied a little bit about military history and learned something from the Battle of Puebla? But obviously not. Anyhow, the French general Charles Loutrel de Lorraine set out to attack Puebla de Los Angeles, a small town in east-central Mexico. And from his new headquarters in the north, Juarez rounded up a ragtag gang of about 2,000 loyal men, many of them either indigenous Mexican or of mixed ancestry. And he sent them to Puebla. Now, the vastly outnumbered and poorly supplied Mexicans, led by the Texas-born General Ignacio Zaragoza, fortified the town and prepared for the French assault, which took place on May 5th, 1862. So Lorraine, the French general, gathered his army supported by heavy artillery and led the assault on the city. And as many of you can imagine, the results were not good. The French lost over 500 soldiers, while the Mexicans lost about 100. So this wasn't a great strategic win in the battle, because the battle continued on for 5 more years against the great nation of France. But in 1867, after the U.S. had settled its civil war, it was able to help its neighbor Mexico. And when the U.S. joined forces in 1867 with the Mexicans, and at that time, the Mexicans captured the Austrian Archduke Ferdinand Maximilian, who had been installed as the Emperor of Mexico by Napoleon in 1864. Well, he was captured and killed. That may have been a deciding point in this French-Mexican war. France looked around and said, we better get our ass out of here. And they withdrew. Well, Cinco de Mayo was not the end of the war, and not the great victory that many think it is. It was significant enough for the Mexicans to recognize that they could fight and they could hang on to their country. That's really what this is all about. So it's not a day of independence in Mexico. It's the spirit of the day that lives on. And it lives on in many, many countries outside of Mexico. As I said before, the Mexicans treat this as a very minor holiday. But it is significant in their history. And it is significant that the U.S. at that point in time had recovered enough to help its neighbor. And that is a significant thing also when we look back at it, this particular day. And so in Mexican-American communities around the Southwest, it's a big holiday. Once again, I thank you for listening, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.